Alrighty, I think we'll get started. Good morning. Morning. Thank you so much for coming today to the Martoc committee meeting. And my name is Deborah Silcox, and I'm the Martoc chair. And I think I would be remiss this morning if I did not at least mention the passing of our wonderful rules chairman, Jay Powell. Jay, of course, was previously a statutory member of this committee, as he was Ways and Means chair when I joined the House back in 2017. He was an incredible mentor to me. He stood for all Georgians. He worked across the aisle. He was a tremendous man, and it is a tremendous loss to our body down here on his passing. So I wanted to have at first just a moment of silence for Jay and his family. Thank you so much. And I was going to ask our new Ways and Means Chair, Chairman Harold, to make a few remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Let's see. Here we go.
You know, it's been tough last year plus for me. Two of my closest friends and mentors here in the State House were John Meadows and Jay Powell. And lost both of those gentlemen. Jay is, if those of you who knew him, know that he's one of the smartest men you'd ever meet. He could sit down with you and go through a 40 or 50 page bill and you couldn't lose him. He'd keep up with you through every page and through every detail. But he was a person that was very gracious and kind and had a good heart and good sense of humor, and would hear arguments for various issues, and whether he agreed or not, he always gave people the opportunity to make their case and to make their argument, which I think is good for us as a state to welcome those differences of opinion. And he's been involved the last couple of years, obviously, in trying to establish initiatives for rural Georgia and to make sure that every corner of our state has an opportunity to prosper. And he was always a very, very strong voice for rural Georgia. And the House is really going to miss his intellect and his compassion and his vision. And there was a tremendous service for him in Camilla on Sunday afternoon, just outstanding outpouring of support for people all over the state, people from the Capitol, from both parties and no party at all. And people from North Georgia and South Georgia. And so it was really a wonderful remembrance of Jay and Jay's life. And so I appreciate those of you that go through this holiday season to keep his family in your hearts and prayers. And we all have those close to us in our own families that we will remember. But Jay had an impact on so many people that will never know his name, that it's really important that we remember the impact that he made. So thank y'all for remembering him and his family, and thank you, Madam Chairman, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, of course, I am calling this meeting partially because we have had a chance to review the 2019 MARTA report in my spare reading time. Been going through this document, and per the statute, it was delivered timely to my office on August 31st. And just wanted to go through some of those things with y'all this morning. MARTA, of course, is a critical piece of infrastructure in the metropolitan area, and it's also a great economic development tool. I believe firmly that MARTA should be safe, clean, and on time. And I think the performance that MARTA gave us during the Super Bowl should be every day. So with that, I'm going to start. And for those of you who have access to the report, great. If you don't, unfortunately, I'll have to just go through this painstakingly one thing at a time here. But I'm turning to the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority payments and contracts of $20,000 or more. I'm going to start on that section. And if you have that available, starting on page 7, there are a list, there are several lines I wanted to mention. The first of those is a charge for lobbying to connect south for $25,000. And then on page 12, there's a payment to Georgia Link for $40,000. To Hambrick Construction on page 13 for $33,332. To Holland and Knight on page 13 as well. 3 payments for $25,000, $36,000, and $177,000. And then on page 14, another payment to Holland and Knight for $25,000. A payment to Joe Young on page 15 for $27,000. To McGuire Woods for $22,500 on page 17. Another one on page 17 for $22,500. Another one for $3,750. Going on to page 24, there's a payment to Robbins Government Relations for $60,000. A payment on page 27 for $32,000. And another payment to Joseph Young for $100,000. For a total of $629,000 and $629,082. Is my understanding that MARTA had 3 lobbyists on staff last year. Is that correct? And so my question would be, why did y'all need an extra $629,000 for lobbying last year? Let's see. Here we go. Podium. I think so. Try it again. Is it working?
Yep.
There we go.
These were resources that we have brought on, both for state, federal, and then some of the services are also some legal services that we use to just make sure that whether it's bills here at the state level, federal level, or anything else that we're well prepared to understand and advocating for. So this is something that that we believe that we need and we rely on, and we could give you some more details about activities if you'd like, but generally speaking, that's what we have been using them for,
Okay.
as well as within our jurisdictions and relationships with the elected governments within our jurisdictions as well.
Sure. So you had federal legislation that was pending last year?
Well, it's staying on top of federal legislation related to Federal Transit Administration funding, notifications for funding sources, and also using them to interface with federal partners like US DOT and the Federal Transit Administration.
Okay. And how much legislation did y'all have pending before our body last year?
I don't believe we did not have any legislation that we had directly proposed for. We were paying attention particularly to the rural transit bill and how that would impact us, and also the ATL, which was created the previous session, and we believe that there was discussions about modifications to that organization as well.
It just seems like a lot of money,
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Parker. It really does.
Mm-hmm.
$629,000 above 3 paid staff people. But do you think it was necessary?
Yeah, we are. I will say that we're having an ongoing conversation now about how we manage this going forward, and that is making sure that we're spending the right amount of money and focusing the right efforts in the right areas is an ongoing conversation that we're having.
Great. Well, I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Next, turning to yes, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Parker, did any of those lobbying funds go toward the Gwinnett initiative with regard to the contract with MARTA?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Did any of those lobbying funds go toward the Gwinnett initiative on the proposal to enter a contract with MARTA?
So $300,000 of the items that you pointed out there were for legal services We did utilize Joe Young in helping to craft the contract that we ultimately ended up agreeing to with Gwinnett County, although, as we know, Gwinnett County did not pass the referendum. But, as you know, we did enter into a contract, and Joe Young supported that. I don't think off the top of my head that anyone other than Joe Young, that it was an internal effort beyond there, but that Joe Young was the largest influencer of that.
Thank you.
So I know there were some other items. There were some other items that I didn't mention that were listed as legal services. So
Yeah.
these were specifically listed as lobbying. So maybe those need to be relabeled.
Okay. Particularly Holland Knight is our general counsel.
Sure.
Also does do some some lobbying work for us on their lobbying arm, but most of their effort is around the support that they give to the board
Okay.
for legal services.
Okay. Turning now to specifically some of the contracts, if you would turn to page 24. Excuse me, page 21 of that same section of the report. There is it looks like a payment made to Obelisk Strategies for professional services for public relations. And the contract looks like the contract amount was $43,750. And I guess I'm just curious, maybe that was for the Gwinnett efforts.
Yeah, as part of the Gwinnett effort, and also just in general, we did undergo a public education campaign,
Right.
and that was effort related to that.
Okay, great. And then going back to page 7, College Georgia Partners. It said it's between MARTA and the Development Authority of the City of Decatur. Now, I know that the DeKalb County, of course, is a MARTA jurisdiction, but I was surprised to see the City of Decatur involved for $2,543,000.
Yeah. So the Avondale Station is in the city of Decatur,
Right.
contrary to its name, and the TOD that was done there, that was work that was done in relationship to the TOD that was developed at that station.
For this, okay, thank you. And then going to page 32. I'm curious about all of these contracts, and really it's listed so generally, all these contracts with H&TB.
Mm-hmm.
It just says specialty safety services, operations and maintenance, electrical engineering. It's just they're very, very general description of these expenses, but they're for a whole lot of money, $9.5 million, $10.2 million, a lot of money.
Yeah, these are all contracts that were put in place several years ago. Just in full disclosure, at the time I was working at HNTB,
Sure.
these contracts were awarded. Behind each of these contracts, the work is done through task orders. And so using a process that makes sure that the best value, these are all selected through best value, and these are, generally speaking, on-call contracts that we would bring in a consulting firm. In all of these cases, I believe there are multiple 2 or 3 firms that have part of these contracts, and the work is being shared through this best value process amongst several consulting firms to do things like, for example, when we had the incident at Peachtree Center related to a fire in the traction power substation, we called upon couple of engineering firms to come in and help diagnose the problem, things like that. Also doing planning work on corridors related to the more MARTA program, things that we have planning going on, safety work. So some of it is shorter term assignments and some of it is longer term assignments. And these are all contracts that have several years in place, and then will get rebid when those contracts expire. And during the life of the contract, we issue task orders, negotiate a price, and do it through a best value process.
Great information. Thank you. Turning to increases of existing contracts, which is the next section in the report, there were just a couple of items that stood out in particular. And one was for Atkins North America and HDR Engineering. It went from $15 million to $22 million. That was a big jump to me.
The work. So these contracts, program and project management, are contracts like I just described, related to the question about the HNT contracts, on-call contracts. The program and project management contract is largely performing construction management work. So when you're riding the station, in a station, and you see some of the MARTA staff either working on conduit or installing equipment, we are using these consultants to help oversee the construction work. And the rationale for this increase in payment was that when these contracts were put in place, we had anticipated the amount of construction work that was going on, and we are just growing and building more construction work. We have recently awarded a new construction central program management contract to another firm, and we believe we've right-sized that contract going forward for the work that we see that we'll be doing under our existing State of Good Repair program, and as well as the expansion in the city of Atlanta and Clayton County.
So that is not with Atkins, that's another firm?
No, there was another firm that was selected. It was a joint venture with Jacobs Engineering and Russell Engineering.
Okay. And one more on that section, and that is the STV contract went from $21 million to $36 million.
Yeah, so that is that increase of $15 million. I don't know off the top of my head how it was broken down, but this contract is for to assist us, the technical assistance around the procurement of rail and bus vehicles. And there are 3 firms that are providing those services. STV is one. WSP is, actually there are 4 firms that are all listed there. So that increase was for those firms, and I believe the majority of that increase is related to support the procurement of the rail vehicles that we recently awarded to Stadler. So
Great.
they are our technical resource to help us manage that project.
Mr. Chairman, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Barker, tell me a little bit about these technology contracts. You've got one for Oracle that more than doubled, and one for Trapeze that increased by about a third. Is this technology that operates the system, or is it technology that the customers use with their cards, or is it all of above? Tell me about these technology contracts.
All of the above. Most of the Oracle systems that we use are supporting business transactions, our HR system, financial systems, things like that. And Trapeze is largely a system that we use for operational work. One of the largest areas that we use the Trapeze system is the scheduling of our paratransit service, managing the daily service of that. But I believe Trapeze, we also use Trapeze for the scheduling of our buses. quarter to quarter, we redesign the bus routes, change times, and we use the Trapeze software to manage all of that. And so these are largely licensing agreements that we have with these two companies.
So back to the Oracle, then, it sounded like much of that is internal for your HR and
Yes.
that type of thing. So was there a significant change in the breadth of product you purchased from Oracle, or did their contract double because you replaced a secondary vendor, or?
What?
Extended the term of the contract?
Yeah.
For Oracle as with.
Yeah, so the contract was expiring. We extended the term of the contract,
Okay.
so we had continuity of that business system.
Gotcha. Very good. Thank you.
So turning to the next, really over to the section on employees with annual compensation of $20,000 or more. I did have an opportunity to go through that section in detail, and there were approximately 356 employees with overtime that was greater than or equal to 50% of their regular earnings, which added up to $12.5 million.
Yeah.
20 of those with overtime were greater than or equal to 100% of their regular earnings. So 20 employees made more than double their salary in overtime. And I'm just curious, I know that these are union contracts, you have to pay a certain amount, that sort of thing, but is there a way to manage employees better?
Absolutely. The vast majority of this overtime is required because of vacancies that we have, or during this period of time, and we have had a significant effort to bring our staff up to full level. For example, our biggest group of people obviously is our bus operators.
Right.
And we have the bus operators receive overtime really through two ways. One is we had a significant number of vacancies that we have filled. We are fully staffed with our operators, and now our overtime on our bus operators in terms of not having an operator available to do a run on a given day. The other piece of the operators overtime is what we call scheduled overtime. And just to kind of lay a concept out here, if a bus route is 2.5 hours round trip and doesn't equally go into an 8-hour day, we are, through our union contract, paying people for an 8-hour day. So we will build in overtime so that they have in their run extra overtime to run the operation as efficiently as possible. So we do have built-in overtime. It's really about efficiency. That work is picked through seniority. And some of our operators just like to work long days and get a lot of overtime. So in that case, it's the most efficient way that we can do it. The operators, through a seniority system, are choosing their work, and some of the senior operators, like I said, get overtime. But the major impact, or the major control that we're working to improve and have made significant improvements with the bus operators is just having a full complement of bus operators. We've done that. Now we're focusing on police officers and what we call mechs and techs. These are the people who mostly maintain the vehicles and the trains and the buses and the trains, and we're working to get fully staffed on those. And until we have full staff on those, we will be we're covering shifts on overtime. So we're working aggressively to bring that down. We've got a significant effort at my direct report level to really focus on this, because this is an area that we need to improve. And we have several board members here, and they have made this a priority for them as well as a priority for the organization.
No, that's great to hear, because I know increasingly companies that are shopping to possibly relocate their headquarters are looking not only at cities to whether they have transit, but to whether that transit is timely.
Right.
And so I think that's great that there's an emphasis on that. That's great. So that's what I have so far on the audit. I will say that I wanted to talk a little bit about the MARTA Act requirements as well. And one of the MARTA Act requirements under Section 9 of the Act, fares are supposed to be about 35% of operating cost, and was curious, where are we at on that, or do we know, or could you report back later? Or
It's right around that level. It's in the low 30s.
Mhm.
You know, we've gone several years without a fare increase.
Right.
It's as we look towards the 2021 budget, it's something that we need to start thinking seriously about. I don't want to say that we're on the verge of having a fare increase because we haven't enacted those plans, but
Sure.
8 years without a fare increase is significant. And it's something that obviously we need to go through a public hearing process. It's an action of our board of directors through our budget process. But we will seriously consider that because it is critically important that we keep that ratio,
Right.
regardless of whether it was part of the MARTA Act. It is a key component of our ability to operate our system.
Well, and I would love to see that y'all start to look, and I know we've talked about, start to look at distance-based fares.
Yes.
Because I know that maybe isn't possible for all of the system right now, but maybe at least for the airport, that, we could get some distance-based fares technology started,
Right.
maybe on part of the system.
Mhm.
And I'm hopeful that if we can get the express lanes going up on 400, that with BRT starting up in those things, it will be easier, as we
Sure.
discussed, to go to a more distance-based fares. But hopefully we can move towards that.
Absolutely.
So that's great. And then last but not least, of course, under Section 17, it does say that every 4 years that y'all should do a management audit. So I would like to call for a management audit of MARTA for 2020, and would encourage y'all to go ahead and send out an RFP for that.
Okay. Yes. And what we were intending on doing is at the beginning of the year,
Mm-hmm.
and the head of our audit is here if you want to talk in detail about this. But we were going to send a letter to make some recommendations around the areas of the audit, that the focus areas of the audit,
Mm-hmm.
and then have a dialogue. And we plan on using, as long as it's okay with Martoc, because ultimately it's an audit that you're responsible to have us do on your behalf.
Right.
Is we have an audit firm, and we would like to. We've included it in their scope of work and intend on using them. So we're prepared to do that. We need to get the scope of the work defined and make sure it meets your requirements, and then execute it.
That sounds good.
Okay. So we will get you that letter and probably get it to you sooner than the beginning of the year, if that's all right with you.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Is there anything else? I'm sorry. Yes, Chairman Harrell has a couple more.
Sure.
So first, let me congratulate you on the, as you mentioned at the very opening, 6 or 7 plus years of balanced budget. So we're on a good path. I'm looking under the appendix tab on pages 7 and 8, and as we just discussed, fare revenues and other revenues, which would be advertising or leases or so forth, have been largely flat over the last 3 years or so. And MARTA's benefited by a strong economy and increases in sales taxes,
Right.
and which has helped to a great deal to
Significantly helped.
significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my question becomes is why I don't think we're in anywhere near a significant recession in the next 12 to 18 months. A recession will occur at some point, and sales tax revenues may not continue as strong as they have been in recent years. So how are you planning going forward for what has been a number of years of flat, and I'm going to use this word, core revenue, the fare and the advertising, to be prepared? Because then again, your net position has continued to gradually decrease as well.
Yeah. So several things. To talk specifically, and if you're okay with it, I'll use the term of other revenue.
Yes, sir.
The revenue that we generate from advertising and transit-oriented development are the two largest sources. We have a small amount through a concessions program. The advertising contract, I believe, expires in a year and a half or 2 years somewhere, and we will, as we re-advertise that, we will look to thoughtfully maximize revenue. I don't think we're, I'm not interested in, completely, just doing everything we can to get every single drop of revenue through advertising, but it's a critical component to our services. We are expanding our TOD program, and every time that we build another TOD program, we're mostly doing that through ground leases and creating revenue through that. These are all sources that are going to be always going to be significantly smaller than our fare revenue and our sales tax revenue. I completely agree that we need to be prepared for a recession, and I've been the inheritor of an organization that has put together a significant amount of money in reserve, and the money that's in reserve is really aimed at getting us through some level of a minor recession. We've built that into our financial model. Obviously, we don't know when and if that's going to happen, but it will happen. And so that's a piece of guarding against that. And then a serious conversation about fare revenue, and I think also a serious conversation about parking revenues as well. If you think about MARTA and the MARTA system, we're one of the few people who has parking that is just generally free. So those are, sort of policy decisions that staff and the board need to work through and do it in a way that supports our ongoing fiscal stability. But I think we're in a good position,
Right.
but we need to look towards the future. And then, we started some of this conversation about controlling overtime, and we are going through a internal process of really looking at making sure that we are right-sized, the organization is right-sized, and we can't ever forget about the expense side of controlling budgets. We need to balance both through creating revenue, but also controlling expenses. And so we are very focused on making sure that we are containing and slowing down our expenditures.
Well, on that point, on the expense point, and I appreciate the comments with regard to revenue, still on page 8,
Mm-hmm.
most of those operating expenses have reasonable increases year over year over this
Yeah.
three-year period, with the exception of general and administrative.
Mm-hmm.
That seems to have, at least from 17-18, a fairly large increase as compared to the other operating expenses. And I presume that is something, too, that you're also focused on to try to contain
Yes.
that expense category.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's the most important thing that we need to focus on.
Very good. Thank you.
Senator Beebe?
Yeah, I just kind of want to echo Chairman Harrell. Congratulations on the balanced budgets and,
Yeah.
and the fiscal responsibility you've had. To his point on a recession may come, I'm a firm believer that volume cures a lot of evil.
Yes.
And will help offset anything. So my feeling is just continue good customer service. Make sure we have Wi-Fi in the buses and in the tunnels, and that the customer experience is good. And I think if we do that, the volume will be there, and it'll hopefully offset any recession that we have if people will take MARTA and use the service. And I think if it's a good service, they'll use it. So anything we can do to help. I know one of the things that I am proud of is y'all reaching out to the CIDs. I know, like for the North Fulton CID, just recently is spending $350,000 to do 3 bus shelters
Yes.
on your routes, and that's all private dollars, none of your money, and so that's a good thing, and we need to continue to do that. But if there's anything we can do to help you from an advertising standpoint or whatnot, you just need to ask us, and we'll do whatever we can to help drive that extra other revenue you talked about.
Yeah.
And then my last question: are you ready for the SEC championship?
We are ready for the SEC championship.
We got
Good
we got a lot
question.
of my brothers from Louisiana coming down. LSU, a lot of LSU fans coming in town.
Go
So-
Dogs.
So just want to make sure you're ready for the game. You all did do a great job during the Super Bowl. It was unbelievably good service. The airport did a good job. Everybody coordinated, and that's teamwork. And
Yeah.
I'm proud of what y'all did. So
Yeah, Dave Springstead, our head of rail, is here, and we've been talking a lot about that. And we will, we will continue to provide great service, deploying administrative staff to make sure that we're augmenting our police and our operations personnel in order to to meet the needs of an event like this.
Madam Chair, this has nothing to do with the audit, but can I ask another question?
Of course,
I'm on
yes.
a committee that Chairman Gooch is
Mm-hmm.
chairing, and we're actually having our last meeting tomorrow to make final recommendations on e-scooters. Can you talk a little bit about what MARTA's doing on that, and if for that last mile of connectivity, are they a problem? Are they being parked in the way? Do people just drop those scooters in front of the buses and so on, or just talk to us a little bit about e-scooters, if you would.
Yeah, so we are, we're working with primarily the city of Atlanta to make sure that our policies fit in with their policy that they've been considering. From from the perspective of people leaving them around, I will say that we do see these more and more in parts of the station that I wish I didn't see them at. We would like for people to use e-scooters safely and come to our stations and then walk through our fare gates and not take the e-scooters with them. We do see more and more of them on the platforms. Very, very infrequently we've seen them thrown onto the trackway, which is the biggest problem that we'd be concerned about. So it's growing. That's my sense, is that the problem is growing, and we want to make sure that the policy that we have fits in and dovetails well with the jurisdictions that we serve. That we're not creating confusion for our riders that on the city street you can do this, but once you get in MARTA, it's a different set of rules. I think we need consistency so people can understand how they should safely use those e-scooters. Now, the fact that they're in our stations is a good thing because, it's extending the last mile connectivity. People can get a little further, without driving or riding a bike. So I think overall it's a good thing for our system.
Well, I will tell you, during our meetings, one of the things we learned was Georgia Southern embraced e-scooters, and they've got an unbelievable program, and they're working with the e-scooter companies, and it's worked very well. And I think you can either embrace it. The technology's not going away. The e-scooters aren't going away, so I think we have to embrace it and figure out how we make it work and have some parameters to make it work, and it could help in the last mile connectivity and increase ridership and volume, I talked about earlier.
One of the things that we have, we're undertaking right now through our capital program is we will, over about a 10-year period, be rehabilitating all of our stations. And if you think about a rail station, it's very intuitive when you get off the rail station where the bus is. It's just sort of all built in. It's this built environment. And so what we want to do next is all of these alternative modes, the micro modes of transit, build them in so it becomes much more intuitive. And we believe that if we create this environment, order should come out of that. I don't want to say it's guaranteed, but without order, chaos will reign. And so we're working to create some order within the station so it's clear where those e-scooters would be, where you should leave them, make it convenient for people to use, and ultimately, make a better experience for our customers.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mr. CEO, and thank everybody for attending today. I believe we're adjourned.
Thank you.